Hi, welcome back to Math with Kim. We are working with proportions. Now, what we're going to first talk about is it a proportion? And what is a proportion since we are speaking of it? Well, a proportion is two equal fractions. They can also be considered rates, they can be considered ratios, right? But really, we know that rates and ratios are usually written in fraction form. So, when we talk about is it a proportion? Now, these I've already done, all right? So you could be given, let's look at example 1A, 1/2, 4/8. Are these proportional? Is it a proportion? Okay, we need to prove that they are equal because two equal fractions, two equal rates, two equal ratios means it is a proportion, okay? So how do we prove it? Well, we've got different methods, of course. If you look at this one, of course, I put a simple one so it would make sense. But if you look at 1/2 and 4/8, most of us can identify that 4 out of 8 is the same as 1/2, right? But let's prove it. We can prove it again a couple of different ways. One of the ways is we can use cross product. So we can multiply across. 8 times 1 is 8. Start with the other denominator. 2 times 4 is also 8. 8 is equal to 8, so therefore these are yes. These are equal, so yes, it is a proportion. Okay? Now, let's take a look at example B. 6/10 and 9/15. Now again, let's cross multiply. 15 times 6 is 90. 10 times 9, also 90. So there, we proved it by using cross products, right? Or cross multiply. But also, look what I decided to do. Now, I could have done it for this one as well, but a lot of us are using our calculators, right? And a really quick way to see if fractions are equal is turn them into decimals. Numerator divided by denominator. So if you have your calculator, go ahead and take 6 divided by 10, enter, and you should get 0.6, or in other words, 6/10. That's how it's written and read. 9 divided by 15, enter, should also get you 0.6. Therefore, you are showing that even their decimal equivalences, or their decimals are equivalent, okay? Let's move on to the next two, all right? So let's just try these. So we're going to start with C. We're going to say 3/5. Is that equal to 33 times 5? Well, we're going to start with 50 times 3. What do we get? 150. Then we're going to cross multiply the other direction. 5 times 33 is 165. Now, are these the same? No. They are not equal. Therefore, these are not proportions. Okay? That's important. Now, again, we can do the cross multiplication of this one as well, but we've seen 3 examples of proportions. So now let's take a look at solving using proportions, okay? So this is an important section because we use proportions to solve many of our problems. Anytime that we are solving, when we're dealing with fractions and we have an unknown, these are proportions. So we are going to cross multiply and solve, all right? So here's our steps. First step, cross multiply. We just did that on the previous page to prove equal fractions and proving proportions, right? So now, second step, put an equal sign between those two products. Solve for the variable. So that's what's different about this section than last section is we have variables involved, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. 50 divided by 3 equals x divided by 10. Now, we're going to cross multiply. I usually start with multiplying the direction that my variable is, okay? So I would start with my 3 times x, which we should know is 3x. And then I'm going to put that equal sign, and then I'm going to cross multiply the other direction. 10 times 50 is 500. Now, are we done? No. If you don't remember how to solve for equations, please look up my video, Solving Equations. This is a one-step inverse operation. How do we get rid of multiplication? We divide. And what we do to one side of our equation, we have to go and do to the other, okay? 3 divided by 3 is 1, x. And then if we enter this in our calculator, we're going to get a repeating decimal, 166.666666. So I used a repeating bar to represent. Now we could also round, and again, rounding would obviously be determined by the question. They would ask you what decimal place to round it to. Or if they want you to write it as a fraction, this is a mixed number. The 166 is the whole number, and the 0.66666 repeating is equivalent to 2/3. So this is how we would write this. We would go from an improper fraction to a mixed number if that was required of you. Okay, now as you can see, this one is done and we have a negative. Now sometimes the negative is sitting next to the fraction bar, and that confuses some people, so I always suggest dropping it to the denominator or putting the negative in the numerator, depending. This one I wouldn't connect it to my x. I would definitely, and as you see, put it in the denominator. Now we're going to cross multiply this one, and notice I'm doing this math again. 3 times x is 3x equals negative 9 times 5 is negative 45. And then we're solving for x. So the next step, of course, to undo the multiplication, as you already saw, is divide. What I do to one side, do to the other. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Keep your x. And negative 45 divided by 3 is negative 15. Okay, so this is, again, how we would use proportions and problem solving.